Coming up now in your spoiler-free wrestling news rundown, we've got all the news coming out of New Japan Pro Wrestling's Dominion event on Sunday and how it impacts the Forbidden Door pay-per-view on June 26th. Also, is there backstage heat on Thunder Rosa for her match against Marina Shafir? And we've also got news from elsewhere around the wrestling world. Subscribe to Spoiler-Free Wrestling for all your wrestling news. Welcome back to Spoiler-Free Wrestling, everyone. I'm your host, Ian. And let's start this video off with some news involving the altercation between MVP and Chris Jericho, which took place last month. So to get you up to speed on what happened here, on Friday, there was a report in the Wrestling Observer newsletter that MVP and Jericho had gotten into a confrontation last month. Here's what Dave Meltzer wrote. He said, after the May 18th show in Houston, there was a confrontation in the hotel where the wrestlers were staying at between Chris Jericho and MVP at about 1 a.m. after the Dynamite tapings. Something that I'm not clear of happened 18 months ago where they had a falling out. Jericho was talking to Matt Hardy and MVP showed up. Most people didn't know what was up and thought he was kidding around until it became clear he wasn't kidding. Nothing bad happened even though it was a tense situation. Jericho did tell him that he doesn't fight jobbers when he got in the elevator, and MVP was screaming about it in the lobby. Now, in terms of what caused the falling out between Jericho and MVP roughly 18 months ago, it was suggested in an article by WrestlingNews.co that the falling out between Jericho and MVP occurred around the same time that Jericho posted this tweet. It's up on your screen now, and boy, do we not have time to go into all the different things you could discuss about this tweet. But what is relevant to this story is that MVP responded to it. His response is up on your screen now. And according to a report from Fightful Select, the two exchanged direct messages that weren't public after this exchange on Twitter, and that just increased the tension and falling out between Jericho and MVP. So Fightful Select reached out to both MVP and Jericho. Jericho responded with a simple quote saying, "Nothing else to say, I don't fight jobbers, enough said." Meanwhile, MVP said there was an exchange, but it didn't go down like that. And he also stated that there are two sides to every story, with the truth usually somewhere in the middle. So the two had used to be friends, but it looks like the catalyst for Jericho and MVP's altercation was that tweet that Jericho sent out 18 months ago. And so that's all there is to know regarding this story for the time being. There is also a little bit of a story developing on Reddit right now regarding the match between Marina Shafir and Thunder Rosa from AEW Dynamite last week. Now, just to provide a little bit of context to this story, it has been reported that Thunder Rosa is a little frustrated with the amount of television time she's gotten since winning the AEW Women's World Championship. So it's possible that Rosa was going into this match with Marina Shafir, perhaps feeling a little underappreciated by the promotion. Now, if you watch this match, there are a couple of moments where it appears as though Shafir and Rosa are not on the same page. There is one spot where it looks like Rosa doesn't go up for a suplex, and Shafir basically has to lift her dead weight to deliver the move. There's also a point where the two look like they might actually be grappling to see who ends up on the top position. But Britt Baker and Marina Shafir both liked this tweet that's up on your screen now from Eric in Sarasota. He wrote, "It's been a long time since I've seen a match where somebody so obviously tried to make themselves look better than their opponent by sandbagging and no selling, but I just saw a perfect example of it on Dynamite." And Marina Shafir also liked a follow-up tweet from Eric in Sarasota, which read, "It might just look like a bad match to the untrained eye, but it's pretty clear when somebody doesn't want to play ball, which sucks because it just makes you and your opponent look bad." Now, Thunder Rosa took to Twitter earlier today, and she wrote what's up on your screen now, writing, "Good morning and blessings to all, even for those who do not have the best wishes for yours truly." And she put some pictures of her with some fans up there as well. So that is all that is out there regarding this story for the time being, but we will, of course, post updates in a future video if new details come out. Andrade El Idolo put out a tweet late Sunday evening, which has a lot of people talking. It is up on your screen now. He wrote, "I can't work with New Japan Pro Wrestling. Thanks CMLL and AAA." Now, if you're not sure what he is referring to, New Japan Pro Wrestling and CMLL have a long-standing relationship, and CMLL and AAA hate each other. So New Japan Pro Wrestling generally will not use wrestlers from the AAA roster on their shows out of loyalty to CMLL. Now, Andrade is regularly performing on AAA shows since his release from WWE. He had been in CMLL before signing with WWE, so Andrade is basically saying, well, I can't work with New Japan Pro Wrestling because they don't work with AAA contracted wrestlers. And before we move on to news from New Japan Pro Wrestling, let's just go over the lineup for Wednesday's edition of Dynamite from St. Louis, Missouri. There are 4 matches announced for the show. We will see Wardlow take on a whole bunch of security guards, and this is due to the class action lawsuit that Smart Mark Sterling has filed against Wardlow. We will see the AEW All-Atlantic title qualifying match between Ethan Page and Miro. For the AEW World Tag Team Championships, we will see a 3-way ladder match as Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus with Christian Cage in their corner defend against the Hardys and the Young Bucks. And in a hair versus hair match, it's Chris Jericho versus Ortiz. That's all on Dynamite coming up on Wednesday. It was a big weekend for New Japan Pro Wrestling. They presented Dominion from Osaka-jo Hall on Sunday. We won't go over all the results for the show, but we'll cover the big news items, including Jay White winning the IWGP World Championship from Kazuchika Okada. So White went into this match saying he was going to beat Okada at his own game, and so sort of implying that he wasn't going to cheat. Gato evidently didn't get the memo. He tried to cheat quite a bit. Now, White would go back on his promise at one point, hitting Okada with a low blow. That move didn't quite factor into the finish, however. He would later pick up the victory with the Blade Runner. So now this presents some interesting scenarios for the Forbidden Door. Now, on Dynamite last week, we had seen Hangman Page wanting to get in the mix for the IWGP World Championship, but saying he wanted to face Okada. Adam Cole then got up and said that he should be in the mix for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, but it won't be Okada, it'll be his good friend and former Bullet Club stablemate, Jay White. So now this all begs the question of what matches are we going to see at the Forbidden Door? So Jay White could defend his title against Hangman Page. That could be an interesting match for sure. Now, would Jay White defend the title against Adam Cole, considering they have referred to each other as friends? The Bullet Club and the Undisputed Elite appear to be aligned. So what would a match between White and Adam Cole do for that relationship? Not really sure that's clear. And then you have to ask, well, who is Kazuchika Okada now going to face at Forbidden Door? He won't be defending the IWGP World Championship, so who does he end up facing? Is Kenny Omega healed in time to come back and wrestle Okada again? I mean, Kazuchika Okada and Kenny Omega had arguably the greatest trilogy in wrestling history. What would it mean for the Forbidden Door pay-per-view to have another match between those two on the card? But Okada may not face Omega on the show. Okada could face anyone from the AEW roster and probably put on a good match. We'll just have to wait and see where they go with it. There were no surprises at Dominion involving the match between Hiroki Goto and Hiroshi Tanahashi. Hiroshi Tanahashi defeated Goto, and so that means Tanahashi will go on to the Forbidden Door to face Jon Moxley, with the winner becoming the new AEW Interim World Champion. There was also a potential match for Forbidden Door built up during the post-match backstage interviews at Dominion when Zack Sabre Jr. called out Bryan Danielson. And wouldn't this be an interesting match, pitting the top 2 technical wrestlers in the world against each other? And so Zack Sabre Jr. said during the interview, "Can you take some time out of your busy golfing schedule at the Blackpool Country Club to find out who the best technical wrestler in the world is?" And Danielson had actually mentioned wanting to face Zack Sabre Jr. during an interview he conducted with Sports Illustrated last month. Danielson said, "I'm thinking about Zack Sabre Jr. and wrestling him to see who is the best technical wrestler in the world. We have 2 very different styles of technical wrestling. We wrestled in 2008 and he was just a kid, but I was super impressed with him then. He's grown into this amazing wrestler, and I don't ever recall seeing anyone wrestle with his technique. So it looks like we are going to see Bryan Danielson versus Zack Sabre Jr. at the Forbidden Door." New Japan Pro Wrestling also announced how their entrant into the All-Atlantic Championship match at the Forbidden Door pay-per-view will be determined. So they are going to have a bit of a mini tournament that will take place June 20th and 21st. So on June 20th, they will have 2 matches. One will see Tomohiro Ishii take on Yoshinobu Kanemaru, and the other will feature Tomoaki Hanma facing off against Clark Connors. Then the winners of those 2 matches will face off the following night at Korakuen Hall, and the winner goes on to the Forbidden Door. Also on that June 21st show, we will see Hiromu Takahashi challenge for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship against Taiji Ishimori. New Japan Pro Wrestling also announced a change in format for the G1 Climax tournament this summer. Instead of seeing 2 blocks with 10 wrestlers, we will see 4 blocks with 7 wrestlers each, so a total of 28 wrestlers have been entered into the tournament, and the winner of each block will move on to the next round. Now, I'm not going to go through all 28 wrestlers who were announced for the tournament. However, there is a link to it in the show notes, and some of those names are up on your screen now. But one person who was not happy with being omitted from the G1 tournament was Carl Fredericks. Now, Carl Fredericks took to Twitter, and he was quite upset that he was not chosen for the tournament. Right, some of his tweets are up on your screen now, saying, "I thought I was in, fam." We won't go over all the tweets that he put out on the matter. He wrote here, however, "Sold on the idea of do this and you're in. Physical, mental, emotional abuse, all for a silly job like this." He also wrote, "Last thing I'm going to entertain with a voice right now, as far as professional wrestling goes, is that NJPW Global doesn't deserve Carl Fredericks." And he also wrote in response to NJPW Global announcing the G1 participants, he writes, "That's wild, there wasn't room for moi." So Carl Fredericks really upset to have not been included in the G1. It was also revealed recently that Fredericks will team up with Christopher Daniels in the upcoming tournament to determine inaugural strong openweight tag team champions. So Carl Fredericks doesn't appear to be leaving New Japan Pro Wrestling anytime soon, but he is not happy that he was not chosen for the G1. If we've got any fans of the National Wrestling Alliance viewing this video, it was a big weekend for that promotion as well. They presented Always Ready on Saturday from Knoxville, Tennessee. Now, going into this event, it was not clear what was going to happen with the world title match scheduled for the show. It was supposed to be Matt Cardona defending the NWA world title against Nick Aldis. However, Cardona suffered a torn bicep at a GCW show recently, so it was clear that he was not going to be able to compete. However, they never announced a change to the lineup. So then we get to the main event section. Matt Cardona comes out. He doesn't want to vacate the title. Billy Corgan eventually convinces him to do so, and then a fatal 4-way is set up with Tom Latimer, Sam Shaw, Nick Aldis, and Trevor Murdoch, and it would be Trevor Murdoch who would pick up the victory in the match. He hit his flying bulldog on Nick Aldis for the victory. So Trevor Murdoch now a 2-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion. NWA then taped episodes of Power the following night, also in Knoxville. There were 2 other title changes to take place on the show. The Commonwealth Connection, that's Davey Boy Smith Jr. or Harry Smith, and Doug Williams defeated La Rebellion. Also, the Women's Tag Team Championships changed hands when the team of Pretty Empowered, Ella Envy and Kenzie Page, used underhanded dirty tactics to defeat the Hex, Allison Kay and Marty Bell. Other notable events from the show: Trevor Murdoch defeated Aaron Stevens in a match that if Stevens lost, he would retire. However, that all seems very storyline driven, so we'll see. But that's what's going on in the NWA right now. And let's finish off with some news coming out of WWE. And we'll just run through some of the things you need to know is going on in that promotion. Gunther won the Intercontinental Championship on SmackDown. He defeated Ricochet. WWE also announced that Cody Rhodes is expected to miss 9 months as a result of surgery to reattach his right pectoral muscle. Now, typical recovery from these injuries is about 4 to 6 months. So don't think Cody Rhodes is going to be out as long as WWE wants their fans to believe he is. There could be a couple of books about Vince McMahon coming out in the not too distant future. It was reported by New York Post's Page 6 last week that Vince McMahon is shopping a memoir to publishers. And a source told Page 6 that the book is essentially Vince McMahon's memoir about building WWE. So that could be an interesting read. Also a possible interesting read is that there is another book titled Ringmaster being written by Abraham Reisman for Simon & Schuster that is also on Vince McMahon's life. However, McMahon is not cooperating with the author on that book, so it should be pretty interesting if both of these books come out to kind of contrast the two. In a previous video, we reported that Paige's contract with WWE has come to an end, and they opted not to re-sign her. Now, she had been medically disqualified from competing for some time due to neck injuries. She did imply that she's not finished in the ring. She wants to get back in there. However, it's not clear if it is safe for her to do so or if any place would clear her to perform. Now, she took to her Twitch stream recently and had the following to say about WWE. She said, "I'm appreciative of WWE. I really am. They helped me so much. They got me a therapist when I had drinking and alcohol issues. They kept me a long time, even after my neck surgery, sitting on my ass. I felt like I had so much left to give there as someone who can cut a decent promo and do a managerial role. It is what it is." So we'll just see what the future holds for Paige in wrestling. WWE will also present an episode of Raw on Monday night from the Intrust Bank Arena in Wichita, Kansas. We've got 1 match and 2 segments announced for the show. The 1 match will see Kevin Owens go up against Ezekiel as that storyline continues. That's a rematch from, what was the last thing we did? Hell in a Cell? From Hell in a Cell. Also on the show, we will hear from the New Judgment Day. Of course, they kicked out Edge last week. And Rhea Ripley, Finn Balor, and Damian Priest will address the WWE Universe on Raw. Perhaps they'll even do something spooky. And also, Seth Rollins is going to address his attack on Cody Rhodes from last week. That's all on WWE Raw tonight. And that's going to do it for this video, everyone. Make sure you're subscribed to Spoiler Free Wrestling for all your wrestling news.